Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. The window of opportunity is wide open for South Africa to create hundreds of thousands of new jobs and simultaneously obtain a source of clean, zero-emission power. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer tells us more. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Shannon.
Now, Anglo-American CEO Cynthia Carroll seems very optimistic about the job creation opportunities that fuel cells can create. Can you tell us more about that?
I think it was the most optimistic thing to come out of COP17. You know, we can see COP17's hopes being dashed and agreements not being reached. But it was very interesting to listen to Cynthia Carroll. I think it's the best speech I've ever heard her make. It was a very powerful one, very upbeat one, where, you know, South Africa is blessed with a beneficiation opportunity from metals that it has in the ground, and that is platinum. It's a very, very valuable metal, particularly in this era, because it is a green metal. You know, platinum is green. It helps the environment of the world. And she's saying, look, we've got opportunities in a low carbon world. You know, people are complaining about the low carbon world and the cost of going into the low carbon world, but here's a great opportunity where you can reduce the carbon and you can also, you know, fulfill the government's wishes of job creation and beneficiation. Fuel cells, we've been talking about them for a long time in South Africa, and it's always been in the next 5 years. We see that Anglo-American actually took it upon themselves, and look, they're not in the business of fuel cell making. So just as platinum is a catalyst for the production of electricity from fuel cells, so Anglo-American is serving as a catalyst for this. It's not a big diversification for them or something like that, but they can partner someone, they can guide someone. So they've gone along to a UK think tank and said, look, do a study on this against the background of, you know, many decades of study that have been done by South Africans and Johnson Matthey and various other companies on the potential for fuel cells. People have always been very, very excited about the potential, seeing them as the future engine of the world. And it was good of Anglo-American, I think, to put this back on the stage firmly, despite naysayers. You know, there are going to be people who say, oh, where the economics and everything. Let's work on the economics, because the potential is there. And the demonstration plants that they've put up show that, you know, you can produce electricity fairly economically from fuel cells. But what about the opportunity of becoming the fuel cell know-how country of the world? Because you've got the platinum base, you now set up a business here, a business that creates a whole new industry of producing various fuel cells that, you know, the fuel cells we know, you know, 100 years ago they discovered that, you know, you mix the liquid hydrogen with the liquid oxygen, you use the platinum as the catalyst, and you get electricity and you get water and you get heat. These are all very valuable commodities, because we're talking about zero emission electricity. This is clean electricity. So it's like the answer to a maiden's prayer. What other country in the world trying to fight, you know, high carbon is able to reduce its carbon with the help of their own metals and minerals in the ground, with their own metal in the ground, and at the same time spawn off, and she said this, hundreds of thousands of jobs. When last have we heard someone from a public platform talk about hundreds and thousands of jobs? Now, that's at least 200,000 jobs, because we've got to go beyond the hundreds. That's a lot of jobs. This is what South Africa needs at the moment. And she's saying, you know, with the correct deployment of investment in manufacturing and the maintenance activities, these jobs can be created over the next 30 years. You know, if South Africa does not realize that this is a window of opportunity and closes its ears to it, you know, future generations will stand up and condemn it. I think the very stones here will stand up and say, hey, guys, do something, because this is very clearly something that we shouldn't let ourselves down on.
Now, Carroll believes that South Africa could become the global leader in fuel cells. Will this need extra sort of education, or what would that entail?
Yeah, you know, there is already research into fuel cells. I mean, South Africans are not fast asleep, and Cynthia Carroll and Anglo-American are not the only ones, along with Anglo-American Platinum, that have got their eye on this. You know, people have been looking at it very intensely. various science and technology ministers from South Africa have been saying we've got a hydrogen economy. They've been putting funds behind it. You know, I think even Anglo American Platinum is involved with this 100 million fund to support users of platinum group metals. Already there's one American company that's taken this up. We need to see this in action, you know, and the government is fairly determined to seize this opportunity, because, you know, immediately after I listened to Cynthia Carroll speak at on the periphery of the COP17, you know, I rushed off to our Minerals Minister, Susan Shabangu, and I said, what do you think of this? And she said, look, this is amazing, because, you know, I want beneficiation of minerals, and they're giving me beneficiation of metals here with platinum, and we've got more platinum than anyone else in the world. And at the same time, I want lower carbon. You know, I want a reduction in carbon, and this is what it gives me. So, you know, we're killing two birds with one stone, and then the spin-off is jobs. And we've got this industry where, you know, we can start, there's a clear potential to export knowledge and products into the world. It's just a matter of time. If we determinedly set up a base to do this here, we will be, you know, to fuel cells what America is to aircraft with Boeing, and what Europe is to aircraft with Airbus. I mean, we'll be able to export these things and export the knowledge. I mean, it's a window of opportunity that's wide open, but certainly we should get through this window and do something.
And Shabangu also said that Carroll's comments were exactly in line with South African policy.
Exactly. We have a situation where the government has a framework which says, look, one of the important things that must come out of the endowment of metals and minerals that this country has been blessed with, you know, is a beneficiation. Now, South Africans have coined that word. You know, when you speak to Canadians and Australians, they don't know what you're talking about when you say beneficiation. You know, what's that? It's not in the dictionary. But it's adding value to your metals and minerals in a way that's sometimes exponential. And why do we have to do that? You know, it's all right for the Australians. You know, they come here, the High Commissioner says to me, what are you guys doing, and what are you trying to beneficiate? What is this all about? You know, just copy the Australians. You know, dig the hole, pull the metal out, put it on a train, get it on a ship, get it to market as fast as you can, and make a lot of money. Now, what are you guys faffing around with? You know, it's fine for the Australians. They've only got a small population there. You know, they've got a massive country and 20 million people. We've got 40 million people, growing to 50 million people, and a massive unemployment rate. We've got to do something differently, as we know we can do. Look at Sasol. Okay, Sasol is now, you know, one of the people who are putting a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere, so they need to deal with that. But they can. Once you get to that challenge, they've got 120 PhDs looking at that. How are they going to solve that problem? You've got to solve the problems. A lot of people are saying, oh, this fuel cell thing, pie in the sky, because especially older journalists who've heard this for a long time, you know, you can see the articles they're writing, you know, cynical. But I think, you know, you put your mind to this, and you do it because it's such a big opportunity. And as we say there, the government is also intent on creating a low carbon economy here. And here it fits into this framework of policy that has been set down, and strategy by the South African government.
Now, going back to the climate change issue, coal is still a major player for Anglo American. What are they doing to perhaps impact less on the environment? So
you've got the split personality with diversified miners. You know, you've got Anglo American that can produce platinum, and it can actually protect your environment, and it is, because it's in the catalysts of so many cars already. So it keeps London clean, it keeps Japan clean, it keeps all these big cities clean, and through its catalysis, that it can make sure that your emissions out of your exhaust are benign. And so, you know, you've got that part of this diversified miner, but you've also got the dirty part. It's the coal. But when we say coal is dirty, you know, we mustn't be hypocritical, because we're sitting under lights here that we've only received from coal. I flew to Durban on coal because, you know, that aircraft fuel that goes in comes from Sasol, and Sasol produces this from coal. So, you know, we not only turn on our lights from coal, we fly on coal, we drive on coal. So South Africa is very, very wedded to coal. There is no ways that you can suddenly jump out of coal. You know, you've got to keep producing it. And as Anglo American is saying, not only are we going to produce coal, we're going to produce more coal. The whole world is going to be consuming more and more and more coal. You know, you've got to reach a peak. You've got to bridge this gap that allows other zero emission alternatives to come through. You're not just going to do wind energy and solar energy, but what could you do? Even in the situation, you could use a fuel cell in conjunction with your wind energy and your solar. So they're saying, in the meantime, let's try and clean up our act with coal. Let's do the best we can. And it's not really the miners who are putting the CO2 into the atmosphere. It is the power generators and the people that are turning it from coal to liquids, to petrol and to diesel. They are putting the carbon into the atmosphere. So they must try and take steps through carbon capture and storage and other means to mitigate this. But at the same time, let us do the small things. If we're building houses now for our staff, let's have solar power. If we are having water, let's clean it up. Let's clean up our act and do as much as we can. And you can see with the efficiency of power stations, if you can get those power stations more efficient, you will be doing so much for carbon reduction. And we can see the new Kusile power station, with which Anglo American happens to be involved in Mpumalanga, but being built by Eskom. That is going to be about 40% efficient versus some 28% norm. So already they're moving up the efficiency curve. If you can do that, you reduce your carbon, and that's what this is all about. So coal miners are, again, trying to get themselves involved in how their customers use their coal, how they burn the coal, what they do with it, in order to try and have a cleaner coal and less carbon emission into the atmosphere. But at the same time, they've got to keep mining, they've got to keep supplying.
So it's just a step-by-step process, and we'll just see what happens.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Martin.
It's a great pleasure, Shannon.
That's the show for today. Join us again next time for more news and insight into what's happening in the mining world.